Are you sure your guitar is
There
in
you go,
tune?
guys. Live, full gold star run of Atimba. Okay, so here's the tutorial for Atimba. Let's get right to it. So the first lick, that's the first one that we want to isolate. This lick is so choppy that it's really easy to break it into parts and practice it like speed bursts. So I wouldn't worry too much about. I would just get to that section there and try to play that. It's played in the song kind of like a speed burst. There's a little gap there that allows you to mentally prepare for the next part. So I would try to do a little speed burst of just doing that full riff. Or if you have to break it down, maybe do that. So this requires a bit of a position shift. Getting from here to all the way up to the 7th fret from the 2nd fret, I wouldn't think of that as stretching. I would think of that as a position shift. So you're thinking this. So I'm shifting right over to get to that note. So you could break that section up into 2 different licks in that manner for the second half, or you could do the whole thing as in one go. This next part in the game shows it as a hammer-on, but you could pick every note. So this is pretty chromatic, and it uses all 4 of your fretting hand fingers. Same thing, this song is so choppy, all of the riffs have time in between for you to mentally prepare for each one, and it works out perfectly for speed bursts. So it's really up to you how you want to practice this. You can either do it as speed bursts, or you could do it as loops, or even better, doing it both ways. Awkward fingering, 2, 1, 3, 4, and on different strings. This is going to be a little bit tricky to get down. And you could hammer on that last one. There's basically 2 endings to this lick. So the first one is... So that's the first ending. The second ending... A little bit awkward because you end off on this finger and then you have to quickly shift over to the 6th string for the same finger. You could also change the fingering for this one in this manner. Instead of shifting that finger over, you could do open string. One thing I should mention is that you should probably strict alternate pick all of this. I economy pick this, but unless you're familiar with economy picking, I would suggest sticking with strict alternate picking, down, up, down, up. This next section is the hardest part. There's 2 riffs here that are the most difficult in the entire song. There's a lot of string skipping to it, and it's just plain awkward. It's kind of fitting into somewhat of a pentatonic shape with some added notes. The way that I'm doing this one is I'm barring the first 2 notes and I'm rolling my finger. And then I'm barring with my first finger and rolling it up to the 3rd string. So rolling down and then rolling up. So if you're not comfortable with that technique in itself, spend some time just working on that rolling thing. This part I would definitely chop it into bits. This is a long lick, so it would be better to break it up into smaller parts versus trying to just do the whole thing in one go. So I would break it up with this as the first section. and the next part, and the last part. The next one has a lot of string skipping. I would probably spend some time just working on jumping back and forth between the third and the fourth string. The beginning of this lick starts on an offbeat, so it might make more sense to play this section starting with an upstroke on the higher string and then a downstroke on the fifth string. So the whole lick is like so. Break it into parts. So that beginning is exactly the same as the beginning of the previous lick. We've already done that part, so we need to go to the next section, which we've already covered. And then this part here is a pull-off section. So I would take that and turn that into a loop and as a speed burst. As a loop. The next section, the way it's played in the song, is just loops. So I wouldn't worry too much about. I would just get straight to practicing the more difficult part with the hammer on. So I would break it up into smaller sections, and that would be the first part. And then the next part would be... These parts don't really loop very well, so I would probably stick to doing these purely as speed bursts. This next lick is exactly the same as the beginning of the song. So we've already covered that, so we'll move on from that. The next section is the octave section. In order to get good recognition with this part, you want to really make sure that you are muting all of the other strings that you don't want to ring. Even though you're only playing 2 notes, in order to get both of those notes, we actually have to strum through 3 strings, at least 3 strings. So we want that middle string to be muted or just a click. So I'm just laying my index finger across that string to mute it. When you isolate that, it sounds a little funny, but when you strum through it quickly enough, you don't really hear that click very much. And then the final part, that same fast 2 notes there. And that just repeats. And then we're back to the beginning, starting with this string skip. This part is a little bit awkward, not just because of the string skip, but you're trying to get this note here on the 6th string, and then roll your finger to the 4th string, skipping the 5th. I'm using my 4th finger on the final note. You could use your 3rd finger. And then there's just repeats to finish the song off. If you like this video, hit the old thumbs up button, share, leave a comment for future videos and tutorials, and subscribe for more content.